Yeah, so about trauma release and basic safety and not feeling basically safe. But on the other hand, like if we think about this in terms of two modes, the basic state and the basic safety that is in basic state, and also what is that word in English? In never stopping, is that a word? Non-stop, non-stop is what I'm looking for. Non-stop vulnerability. Vulnerability. It doesn't mean like being like a victim to ready to take punches. No, that also, that construct, not there. Free from that. So not ready, not, you know, on guard, ready to take a fight, not paralyzed, retreating into a shell. I've had moments this week also of going under the blankets and sucking my thumb, you know? You can't avoid it. Everybody has it. Everybody, even Padmasambhava, even Babaji, everyone has had those moments. Plenty of them. So it's would be completely wrong and misleading to say that no, greatest practitioners never have these dark nights or sucking the thumb under blankets moments. No, everybody has. Nobody is an exception. Nobody. But if we don't, well, I'm getting a bit sidetracked, but if we think of the spiritual path and becoming masters, becoming Mahasiddhas, Buddhas, kind of like if we think in terms of becoming spiritual heroes, becoming a hero means going through a process. And that process is bone grinding. It grinds you to dust. That is a very fitting analogy. It grinds you to dust, your bones, your everything. Right? But then you know, there are these three basic modes: fight, flight, freeze. But at some point you come to this basic state, release the trauma completely, so that you remain in the state of vulnerability, remain completely open, remain unconcerned about or so it's good to remember that's where we are going, because you know, having that view that what it means to be free of trauma, free of selfing mechanism, it is total freedom. I'm not sure if unconcerned would be the right term, but carefree, that's the one. Completely carefree. And something that I was thinking about this yesterday evening after we finished, about cessations. So cessations have been extensively spoken about in the book Buddhas Among Us. I'm sure most of you have read it, if not all. But cessations, well, in the context of Bhumi perfections and perfecting 1 through 10th Bhumis, cessation have been discussed in Buddhas Among Us. But the same principle applies to meridian purification. And just to be clear, give a brief explanation of what cessation means, is that selfing mechanism that forces us to think in terms of me and other, which creates the whole dualistic positioning and confusion. Selfing mechanism. If we're talking of cessations of momentary ceasing of selfing mechanism, suddenly you just don't have it at all. It's not that you're without thoughts. You can have thoughts, you can have emotions, whole range of emotions, any emotion, but there's no self there. No I or me there. So the I or me selfing mechanism momentarily ceases. And my own experience of, just briefly, of cessations is that I had my first like a bit longer 1 hour long cessation in 2017 in September. I remember I was teaching a weekend course or a retreat in Helsinki, Finland. And I had many cessations before that, like a sudden, like a 1 second or 2 seconds long cessations. But that was kind of longer one that lasted for an hour in 2017. And then between 2017 and March 2021, those cessations of the selfing mechanism increased in duration. So first was 1 hour, then perhaps a couple of months later was 2 hours, again a few months later 3-4 hours, and again sometime later 6 hours. Then I remember there was one instance when it got to 10 hours, which was really significant. But the next after that, when it lasted something like 14 hours, so around the clock and a little more, that was really significant because I slept during it. And that was a revelation. Like I've had a lot of sleeping problems, like really severe insomnia, because of a very long-lasting burnout and because of having 2 children. So I had really bad insomnia, and I know that many of my students and modern people have lots of sleeping problems. So this is a reason why I do not emphasize sleep yoga. You know, sleep yoga and yoga of dreams is one classical category of yoga, but I have taught it, but I don't emphasize it because I don't think it's suitable for modern people. So many people have sleeping problems. So if you start tampering, if you start messing with it, it can get much worse very quickly and cause bad problems. So that's why I don't emphasize it. But at some point when we have these longer cessations, the cessation will be long enough to last through the whole night. And then, so you can perfect the practice from the waking state without practicing sleep yoga. This was something that I was really bothered about for years, and then asked it from Guru Rinpoche that, how will I be able to finish my practice because I can't practice sleep yoga because I was so messed up. My sleeping patterns were so messed up. And he just said that, don't worry, you can perfect your practice, finish your practice from the waking state. And I was like, oh, thank you. Because I was really worried about it, that I wouldn't be able to do that. But then when I had that first longer cessation, and then gradually the cessations became longer. I remember there was one of 2.5 days, and then the next one was perhaps a week, and then like a week, and then 10 days, and then in 2021, March 15, it became permanent. Complete, lasting, non-stopping cessation. So the selfing mechanism didn't come back anymore. So yeah, I was talking about sleep yoga, so this is the reason why I don't emphasize it. and that it is possible to perfect bhumis without sleep yoga practices. Having said that, some of my students might want to practice sleep yoga, and I have instructions for that. And of course, sleep yoga is extensively taught by lamas of Tibetan Buddhism, which is also an option for you to learn. So cessations of the meridian system happens exactly the same mechanism as with selfing system. So it starts from short ones, small ones, and then the duration increases. First you have minutes, then you work with hours, and which means that it lasts for hours before the trauma stuff kicks back in. And then it lasts for days, and well, I'm still working with days. So there was actually one, well, maybe I won't explain it to save your time, but at one point I felt like, okay, well, I've had enough cessations with the meridian system and then many before with selfing mechanism, that I kind of said to myself that, okay, well, I don't need these cessations anymore. I'll just work through all the remaining stuff, and then when the next cessation comes, it shall be the last final lasting cessation. Okay, so that was, I just kind of said it to myself, and then 7 months go by, and it's bloody bone grinding. It's ruthless. I mean, it's like being crucified from one day to the other. And then I started thinking, fuck, I haven't had a cessation in months, I'm like, the meter is on red, all the time. So capacity in full, very stressful, very demanding. And then I kind of said to myself again that I shouldn't have really created that boundary of not having cessations. And then it didn't last maybe like a couple of days, and then I had a cessation again. It lasted 2.5 days, which was a few months ago. But yeah, in my experience, like I said, increasing cessation of selfing mechanism the mechanism of it applies to meridians also. And at some point when we work through we purify the meridians, there will be a point when cessation becomes permanent state. And I was just making comments about cessations and liberation, like a bit technical discussion online yesterday and today, and well, it is questionable, and maybe I won't get into the details and all the questions about what nirvana means, because nirvana has different meanings, different definitions of nirvana. Nirvana literally means blown out. So when you have a lit candle and you blow out the flame, it is blown out. Similarly, nirvana in the context of yoga and spirituality means that your stuff is blown out. But, and this I didn't mean to explain, and I don't mean to explain it that extensively, but it is questionable to me because purification of the meridian system results in the so-called light body. And having a light body, especially when you finish the purification of meridians like relatively early on in life, like Shakyamuni Buddha is believed to have done, and then you have lots of years and perhaps even decades to kind of just be in that state. when you are in that state, one starts having siddhis. So, and I don't mean levitation and stuff like that. I mean that one's physical abilities become different than with a samsaric person. I've written about this quite extensively in the case of Amma, the hugging saint, who displays these siddhis. She doesn't need to drink or eat or take rest, and meets individuals, hugs individuals one by one, thousands of them, might be sitting 24 hours, 25, 26 hours non-stop without standing, hugging one person after the other, completely transforming their state of mind. And that, what she displays, is a wonderful example of siddhis of the light body. These siddhis, not having to rest, is a siddhi from the root center, the pelvic floor, Muladhara chakra. Then not having to eat or drink is a siddhi of Manipura chakra, navel center. So there are other siddhis related to the light body, but what I was saying is that Shakyamuni Buddha, all respect to him. I'm not criticizing him as a person. I'm just, pragmatically analyzing his case, because he was said to be fully enlightened. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi is the Sanskrit term. Anuttara means like highest. Samyak, Samyak. Well, maybe you can look up the term Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. But like highly perfected enlightened master. Rough translation of that term. But Shakyamuni Buddha was said to be such a master, and he was said to have attained Buddhahood around the age of, what was it, 32 or 35, something like that. But still at 80, he was practicing jhana meditation. This is also something that I've written comments on, and I've contemplated this for years. Why did Shakyamuni Buddha practice jhana meditation, meditative absorptions throughout his life and even on his deathbed? Because jhana meditation is not Buddha nature meditation. So, to make my question short, I find it, maybe it will clarify to me at some point. If it will, I will tell you. But to me, it's a bit of a question. At this point, it seems that Shakyamuni Buddha didn't purify his meridian system and did not attain light body. Maybe he didn't have trauma because he was a son of a king, he was a prince who lived a very guarded and, guarded life. So maybe he didn't have trauma, so he didn't need to work with his trauma. But to me it kind of seems like, looking at all the pieces of the puzzle that I know at the moment, it kind of seemed that he didn't have tools and he didn't have a correct theoretical understanding how it all works. Because it just doesn't make sense that if you have attained the wisdom mind, emptiness of all phenomena, but you still practice jhanas. Jhanas are a practice of the meridian system. So meditative absorptions, you get absorbed into these different meditative states because you have some stuff in your meridians. If you don't have stuff in your meridians, you can't get absorbed in them. in these states. So the state is created by this friction, really. Friction. And then you remain in that state. So to wrap this up, maybe we can just wrap it up by saying that like I explained, and what is really necessary for us to understand, and what is really a great gift we have in Amrita Mandala teachings, you could say in generally in Vajrayana teachings, tantric teachings, what is immense gift is that first of all we have a view that it is possible to attain full enlightenment in this one lifetime. Not all methods and traditions have that view. So that is one. And the second one is today I was making a short Facebook post about path maps. Path map is a map that meditators, spiritual practitioners use, where the map describes what the journey is, what the terrain is, and it shows you where you are when you start. It shows you all the various stages, points along the way that you need to go through to get to the end goal, to the destination. So to have a path map that, how do you say, is presently and actively used, this is an immense blessing we have in Amrita Mandala. The 13 bhumis, and there are different number of bhumi models, like the 10 bhumis in Mahayana Buddhism. There are traditional Buddhist Mahayana sutras about the 10 bhumis. And then in Vajrayana Buddhism there are 13 bhumi model, 16 bhumi model, 21 bhumi model. But when it comes to, just to avoid confusion about this, because there is confusion about this, you know, if it is wrong to think that, like if we have 16 bhumis instead of 13, or 21 instead of 16 or 13, it would go somehow farther. No, it is simply that if we think that the whole journey is this long, from beginning to end, it means that in 13 bhumi model, this distance is chopped into 13 pieces. In 16 bhumi model, it's chopped into 16 pieces. In 21, into 21. So it doesn't go longer than the 13 bhumis. But yeah, to have a path map. You know, in Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism, at some point in history, they were used as actual path maps. There were people, practitioners, masters, yogis, yoginis, who knew how it all works. They knew that, you know, there are bhumi openings and bhumi perfections. We use those terms, bhumi opening and perfection, but these actual events, bhumi events, are universal. It doesn't matter if you are practicing Advaita Vedanta, Zen Buddhism, Chan Buddhism, Son Buddhism, Pure Land Buddhism, some form of Hinduism, if you're a not practitioner of Hinduism, if you're a Christian mystic, if you are a New Age meditator, if you are Eckhart Tolle. No. It is because our subtle body is built, because how it is constructed, why awakening experiences are the same for everybody. The mechanism of it is the same. The engine is built in exactly the same way. Assuming that we are talking about awakening experiences instead of, for example, meditative absorptions or some exalted trance-like meditation states. That's different stuff. But when it comes to awakening and consecutive awakenings, it follows a pattern. It follows a pattern. But my point is that it is precious to understand that enlightenment is possible in this one lifetime, and that it is precious to have a path map that we can follow. Just like if we hike from one place to the next, and it goes through wilderness, forest that we've never been before, there might be some gorges there, some rivers, some dangerous places, then it's absolutely necessary to have a map so that we find our way safely without risking our lives. And the risk with having a path map that people don't know how it really works, or a path map that is insufficient, doesn't have enough information, is difficult to connect with the experience that we have. So it is not dangerous to have an insufficient path map, but you just don't get to the destination. So there's lots of path maps. Daniel Ingram, who's one of the main figures of the pragmatic Dharma movement of Theravada Buddhism, in his book has collected a lot of these different path maps. He has like dozens of them. His book is Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. So there's tons of path maps, but very few that explain the whole way. So the view that Buddhahood is possible in this life, have a path map, and third, of course, method, practices that make that path map lived, experienced reality. If we only have a path map, but no practices, or if the practices don't work, meaning they are irrelevant, or work only little, it's a problem. Then the first principle of attaining Buddhahood in this life, forget it. Not gonna happen, not gonna work. Very simple, isn't it? Very logical thing. So practices are absolutely necessary. Yes, we all have perfectly enlightened being inside us, but it is buried under stuff. So much junk on it. So sometimes people romantically fall in love with the view, with the idea that, well, there's an enlightened Buddha already inside me, so what's the point of practicing? What's the point of even thinking or learning about these stages along the way? But there are quite a few people, usually like middle-aged or older men, who fall to this. But well, if you don't have the least bit of mindfulness or awareness of one's own mind, then you easily believe that. You believe that idea. But idea, of course, it's a completely different thing than the actual realization and experience and the energy that there is a Buddha sitting here. Yeah. So practices are very important, effective practices, because they, well, in our method it's very, very mathematical really, because you start from 0 and then you just get to 1, get to 2, to 3, to 4, 5 and so on, have all these boomy openings, open the whole stack, of 13 bhumis. Make a hole in the middle of them, in these bhumi chakras inside the head, above the head. And then you simply continue practice where you can even focus your mind on certain areas inside the body or in the aura to perfect these bhumis, to take the practice into the blown out state faster. But here's one thing, very important thing about practices. It needs to be compassion motivated. It needs to be selflessly motivated. If it is ego driven, bhumis won't be bothered. Won't happen. So if you wanna, okay, I wanna open my bhumis and I wanna shout these mantras to open these bhumis and perfect them, won't work. Won't work because one's attitude is in self-based mode and doesn't leave self-based mode. So you have to be smart. You need to have wits always to catch yourself from being in self-based mode. But again, you know, we are masters at fooling ourselves. So I've seen so many people, probably have had moments myself when I firmly believed that I'm in selfless, awakened state, when in reality I was really in ego-driven, self-based state. So we have to be very, very fast to, very quick, very smart, and very fast to change our mind. Very fast to change our stance and standpoint. This is actually really important. Be willing and be ready to, I guess you could say in traditional terms, to leave everything at once. Even your dearest investments, even your most cherished, abode, your most cherished ideas, your most cherished things. Do you follow me? We so easily get into this fixed position, fixed stance, and then without realizing it, believe that we are in selfless state when we are in self-based state. And then we remain in that belief, and then the path will be lost and the end goal will be lost, momentarily at least. But moments last for lifetimes. That's the thing. If we want to attain Buddhahood, full enlightenment in single lifetime, we have to be very quick to change our mind, to change our view, to change everything. Be instantly ready to abandon what is dearest to us. In our mind, not abandoning our families and children and wives and houses and cars and stuff like this. We don't do that in Tantra. This is monastic, like vehicles of renunciation, where you leave something physically. In Tantra we don't do that. We only practice in the mind, which actually makes it more direct. Yeah. So how many things was that? So the view. What was the next one? View, path map, practices, and then of course Guru and Sangha. We cannot do this alone. we cannot do this alone. We cannot reach the Buddha inside us and become the Buddhas, fully become alone, even though it already is in us. This is very, very, very important to understand. It is precious to have a guru or gurus to work with a tantric teacher or tantric master or masters, because these three previous points, they know how it works, or should know how it works. That's actually something I've analyzed and spoken about a lot throughout the years, that teachers and masters, when we talk about teachers, not only people who are instructors or giving some guidances of lesser intensity, but who are teachers of spirituality, they should know, have really solid understanding and solid experiences, and they should have the tools for the whole process. This is my view, that teachers should there should be standards in this art. And I'm talking about a vehicle that aims for Buddhahood. So I don't have problem with people teaching mindfulness, professionally making a living teaching mindfulness, or teaching, like I said, teachings of lesser intensity. But if we talk about a path or a vehicle that has the view as in number one, full enlightenment in one lifetime, then there is so much to improve in the world of this vehicle, this culture. Because so many times teachers just have been misled as practitioners. They might have spent a lot of time in practice, but unfortunately haven't had the essential experiences, Bhumi events, and purification of the meridian system. So they have had other experiences, but that is not good enough when we talk about enlightenment in one lifetime. It is simply not sufficient. So this is something that the culture should get honest about. Do not claim to teach this path if you don't know how it works and if you don't have the tools for it. Just don't do it. Don't, because you will be misleading your students. And this is very severe karmically, very serious karmically, isn't it? If somebody puts faith in you, believing that you will take them to full enlightenment in one lifetime, and that person dedicates years, perhaps they are full-time practitioners or part-time practitioners, practicing anyway, being dedicated fully to spiritual path, and they follow your teachings for years, and in many cases decades, but not much happens, and then they pass away. That one lifetime Buddhahood, that opportunity is gone. Probably one will create very good karmic connections during those years and decades of practice with different masters and masters of the lineage, and therefore are well taken care of and guided after passing away. but that one lifetime came and went, and the promise went unfulfilled. This is a very severe karmic repercussion for the teacher. And it is for that teacher who was in the position of a teacher. Perhaps that teacher's predecessors, teachers and masters before, are also to blame, but you cannot just pass that karmic responsibility for them. No, if you are a teacher, it's your responsibility. Right? So this is something, karma, and to contemplate one's actions and the consequences of one's actions is something that all the greatest masters keep reminding, and yet these reminders are bypassed or dismissed. Oof, I wouldn't want to have that kind of karma. So what? The view, path map, practices, guru, and sangha. Sangha. Very important to have friends. Very important to have practicing friends that are there for you, that you can confide to. Confide? Is that the word? Confide? Yeah. That you can really, we can't often talk completely openly to our friends from the school or friends from the work or family members, but Sangha members we should be able to talk to completely openly. But this is that's why we need to see in person and practice in person and not only online. Of course we can have online discussions, video discussions and discussions here, but we don't really get to know each other, and you don't get to know each other on the screen. It just doesn't work that way. So, that's the on number 4, have a guru and sangha. So this is very important. I have something I can share you about my experience of how deep sangha goes. 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, I was in Japan and I was living in a Zen Buddhist temple for a time. And there I was practicing with about 20-25 people. Only the master in that monastery was Japanese, but the whole community Sangha was foreigners. Americans, a few people from Latin America, some people from Europe, like myself, and then there was one Indian person and few Asian people. And I wasn't there that long, just 10 months I was there. But we practiced a lot. In Zen Buddhism, in temples, you sit a lot. On retreats, you sit 15, 16 hours a day. And then even when it's not a retreat, you sit 7, 8 hours a day. Even when it's not retreat. So lots of sitting together in that same room, in that same space with those 20 people. This means, thousands of hours of sitting together with these people. How to say it? My experience of that is that even though, of course, I got to know some of those people personally, but some of those people I didn't talk to much and certainly didn't know personally. But something that happens when you do Dharma practice together that much, it I would like to say use the word welds people together, joins people together. It's been 20 years since then, and I have physically met only a couple of them after that, but I still feel like very close with everyone who I trained with. I cannot say the same of... I have similar feelings about my secular friends and family members, but not a feeling like that. That's the meaning of Sangha. And this is the reason, well, at the moment we have I just gave the news yesterday about inviting few students on our retreats to our home ashram in Slovenia on the upcoming retreats, 3 people at a time. But this is the reason I've been talking for years to our Sangha that we need our own residential training center. For this reason, it's kind of to me it feels like our Sangha members are spread out all over the world, but mainly people are in Europe or in United States. But we are so far away from each other, so it's kind of like being alone. Even though we can send text messages and send emails and have video calls and have retreats like this online, but it's still not together. Yeah. So I don't know how, but somehow we need to get that center. The biggest issue, of course, is financing it. And I don't know how to do it. There's so few Sangha members and so little public exposure that I have or Amrita Mandala has, so ways of financing it are pretty much up to myself or somebody taking a personal loan. But that doesn't feel right to me, taking a big loan of money to buy a center. Or at least I'm not ready for that. But usually, traditionally, centers are purchased with the support of the establishment, meaning the religious establishment behind the mission, brother lineages, or money given by wealthy people, or even kings and queens, people like that. But I'm the first one. I don't have a lineage, I don't have brothers and sisters. It seems like I don't have wealthy students either, and I don't know any queens and kings. So, but anyway, we need a center to practice together properly. Okay, we were supposed to start prostrations an hour ago. There was a lot of things. I started speaking about cessations and wanted to clarify the meaning of cessations, but I think I accomplished to do that as well. But hopefully something for you to contemplate and think about during this talk of mine.